The price of the Switch 2 has overshadowed its very own announcement. Everybody's talking about the price, and everybody seems pretty annoyed about it, to the point where during the last Treehouse Live, people were spamming the chat with, "Drop the price!" Dingus was one of them, actually. Let's be real. $500 is a lot of money. That's like 125 copies of the original Space Jam on DVD.
Space Jam DVD, Space Jam DVD, Space Jam DVD, Space Jam DVD.
$500 is 111 Pokemon TCG Journey Together packs, which is 1,110 Pokemon cards. $500 is also about 1,111 chicken nuggies from McDonald's. You can get a lot for $500. So if you want to Switch 2, you either have $500 laying around, and it's not a lot of money to you, or you don't have it and you have to save up for it, or you might get it as a birthday or holiday gift for whatever holidays you get down with. If you can't afford a Switch 2 when it comes out, don't worry and don't feel bad. I don't usually buy a system right when it comes out. I usually wait a year or so because there's more games to play, they're easier to get, and they've usually worked the bugs out. But is $500 actually that ridiculous for what you're getting with a Switch 2 versus what the other consoles offer? I think it's actually worth it. Here's why. First and foremost is the most obvious one. The Switch 2, just like the Switch 1, is portable and dockable. The Xbox can't do that. PlayStation can't do that. The Steam Deck, yeah, it does that. But Nintendo's kind of in a class of its own when it comes to the consoles. Mario Kart World has been a major point of protest. Priced at $80, it is now the most expensive Nintendo game ever. But Nintendo adjusts their game prices based on value and replayability. The highest game before this was Tears of the Kingdom, priced at $70, but no other game has reached that height. In terms of value and replayability, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch was the most popular Switch game of all time. They sold 67.35 million copies of it. And they added 48 extra courses to the DLC, either paid or free with a Nintendo Online subscription. Which means it's safe to say that Nintendo probably wants Mario Kart World to stay relevant and replayable through the life of the Switch 2. And if you want Mario Kart World, it comes bundled with the Switch 2 for only $50. And who doesn't want Mario Kart World? Which is why I say that the Switch 2 cost $500, not $450. Now, the Switch 2 hardware feels like a worthy successor and upgrade to the Switch 1. Look what they did with the old hardware. It lasted 7 years and it's still fun to play. We don't know exactly how powerful the NVIDIA chip inside the Switch 2 will be, but Nintendo's not really trying to break barriers graphically. But the hardware upgrades to the Switch 2 feel worth it to me. To see the specs and the breakdown, check out my last video. One thing that's disappointing is the battery life of the Switch 2. We haven't actually tested it yet, but it's said to run between 2.5 to 6.5 hours versus the Switch and OLED running between 4.5 and 9 hours. Yeah, it's disappointing, but with all the new features and hardware, it's kind of expected to me. My new favorite feature? Yeah, still mouse mode. I don't know all the crazy ways that Nintendo's going to utilize this cool feature, but I do know that when I played Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, it was the best a first-person shooter has felt in so long. And I'll tell you why. It's because I've always wanted to use a mouse to play first-person shooters because the accuracy is unparalleled. But when I try and use a keyboard to move around, this doesn't work for me. I'm terrible at it. PC players like Dingus have been running circles around me, but with mouse mode, it's no longer. And one of the craziest parts about mouse mode is that it can seamlessly switch from normal mode to mouse mode without going into the options. You can do it mid-gameplay seamlessly. And on top of that, you can use mouse mode on almost any surface, so you can play it on anything. I played it on my pants, for crying out loud, and it was great. One thing that I appreciate is that your library isn't starting from scratch if you have a Switch 1, because the Switch 2 is backwards compatible. I know, it feels like a given to have backwards compatibility, but that's not always the case, okay? We will always want backwards compatibility with consoles. It just makes sense, especially with digital games. So thank you, Nintendo, for hooking that up because, well, we deserve it. Nintendo surprised us and made digital games even better with virtual game cards. If you have more than one Nintendo Switch console, you can seamlessly transfer digital games from one Switch to another. Local communication is required between the consoles, but only the first time. So for families with multiple Switches, this is a game changer. And here's another game changer. If you have a Nintendo Online account, you can trade games with your family members for up to 14 days at a time. Here's where the value comes in, because Nintendo doesn't require online family members to be blood family members. They can be chosen family members. So I have 7 members of my chosen family on my Nintendo Online family, and they can borrow any of my games, 1 game at a time, for up to 14 days, which makes our game libraries about 7 times bigger. It's unclear if you need the regular online family membership for $35 to do this, or the family membership with expansion pass for $80. But either way you cut it, $35 divided by 8 or $80 divided by 8, it's a lot of value for not a lot of money. Either way, I'm getting the family membership with the expansion pass because the Nintendo Gamecube emulator is coming. Gamecube was one of my favorite systems of all time. I got to play Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and I'm telling you, I knew back then it was ahead of its time, and it still slaps hard. I also got to play F-Zero GX, which was way faster and crazier than I remembered, and also still holds up. Then I got to play Soul Calibur 2, which is one of my favorite fighting games of all time. All 3 of them are going to be on the Nintendo GameCube's emulator, and I'm hyped for all of them and all the other potential games that will be coming out. Another reason I think it's worth the $500 are the Nintendo exclusives. In a world where Microsoft is giving up all of their exclusives and PlayStation is porting all of their exclusives to PC just to stay afloat, Nintendo, for the time being, is keeping all of their exclusives on Nintendo systems. For now, at least. And I love Nintendo games. I just do. I love Nintendo games. We have Mario Kart World coming, which is an absolute banger. We have Donkey Kong Bananza, which I believe is an actual sleeper and could be my favorite new game on the Switch 2. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is shaping up to be the best Metroid ever. Kirby Air Riders is coming from legendary game director Masahiro Sakurai, who created Kirby and Smash Bros. You know a new 3D Mario game is coming up at some point. I'm really hoping a new Star Fox game will come out, maybe a new F-Zero game. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Nintendo's bench is deep. And then there's the upgrades, the Nintendo Switch 2 editions of the games. Yeah, they're gonna cost extra money, sure. But I played Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Nintendo Switch 2 edition, and guess what? They felt amazing. They were completely different games than the originals. For me personally, that's worth the $20 each to play those games again. And Mario Party Jamboree is getting a whole new section, Jamboree TV, which inserts you into the game. Pretty crazy. Some of these upgrades might be free with the expansion pass, such as Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which have been confirmed. Some of them might not be. Yeah, paying for upgrades is annoying, but when you look at what the actual value they're adding is, you get to decide if it's worth it for you or not. Now, we know that game chat is best enjoyed with an external web camera and that the Nintendo Switch 2 is compatible with Bluetooth. But one thing that I love about the Switch 2 is that it's compatible with third-party gear, meaning you can plug in any web camera with a USB-C plug into your Switch 2 and any Bluetooth headphones. Granted, they might not work as well with Nintendo's first-party gear. For example, we know that Nintendo's camera is optimized with a wide lens to pick up 4 people, but I love the fact that I can take my Logitech web camera from my PC and plug it into my Switch and my Skullcandy headphones and link them to my Bluetooth, and I don't have to pay extra for gear if I don't want to. The Switch 2 has 256 gigabytes of storage built in, compared to the Switch 1 that had 32 and the OLED which has 64. And the Switch 2 will have a micro SD Express card reader on it, which means you can choose the size of the storage you want to add to it. My PS5 drives me crazy because the terabyte of storage never feels like enough. And if I want to double the built-in storage, I have to buy and install a hard drive that's going to cost about $130. And if I want to double the Switch 2's internal storage, I just have to put in a $72 Sandisk micro SD Express card right into the slot. In closing, I have to say, I actually trust Nintendo. I've been a fan of theirs since the NES, and their game systems and software are the actual core of their business model. Sony has music, movies, TVs, hardware. Microsoft has too many things to name, and Nintendo has their games. I think Nintendo genuinely cares about their fan base and their players, and they're not trying to price gouge us. If you didn't know this, companies rarely make profit off of the consoles. They barely break even most of the time. The profits are made from selling games. And you still think $500 is crazy? Look at this graphic from IGN with the prices of Nintendo consoles back then and adjusted for inflation. It's not that crazy, not that far off. So yeah, $500 is a lot of chicken nuggets, but I will personally be skipping the Space Jam DVDs and the Pokemon cards in order to pick up my Switch 2. Unless, of course, the tariffs kick in and the Switch costs like $800. Then I'm probably just going to be crying on the inside and outside and have to redo this entire video.